How you doing, Sean?
I'm great, Britt. How are you?
Good. I love your book. It's one of the few books that gets under the hood and doesn't just do the same blah 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 about this movement. And it's a cool point of view on it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's because I myself, like you, it was very important growing up. This is life or death, this music to us growing up. And it was it's not like thrash where it has that community, but it's a community, and it's something that just meant the world and means the world, and at one point got very made fun of.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just reading a Rock Candy magazine article on Kip Winger, and how painful it was for him to have put all this time and energy into his craft and his art, and to be so rapidly dismissed. All of a sudden, you go from your headlining, arenas to being like the point of derision for a whole generation of people. He was actually like the focus point because of that Metallica video where they're throwing darts at his picture on a dartboard, and Beavis and Butthead,
Yeah.
where the kid who's unpopular with the winger shirt. Like, it was incredible how fast it all turned, and so unfair in so many ways.
And now he just got I hear he got a sincere apology from both of them, but mainly from Hetfield. He got a sincere apology from James Hetfield recently.
Oh, no kidding. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
hear
yeah,
that.
yeah. I think he got a sincere apology from Lars and James.
Oh, that's well, you know what? That's something anyway. That speaks to some character.
Yeah. There's one line in your book. It says, you know, I miss the days of believing in rock stars. And it's just so true because Nikki Sixx, like to me, larger than life. You had Gene Simmons before that, but just as a kid in high school, he was everything.
Well, it was for me too. Like, I just couldn't wrap my head around that kind of independent thinking as somebody who grew up in a pretty strict Catholic household. It
Mhm.
was fascinating to me that you'd even deign to talk about some of the things that he was living, and and
Yeah.
and, and by all accounts living quite authentically. So it must have been terrifying for parents and authority figures to have someone like that. But really, what is it? It's insight into the fact that not everybody has the same type of upbringing. That's somebody who had it tough and rebelled and found a way to find some inner strength, and make something of himself under really difficult circumstances.
And then change kids like you and I grew up in suburban New Jersey, and it was hitting me like a ton of bricks. These circus magazines, I mean, you start before that, but this part of the book really where metal explodes in like 83 and takes on this thing. It's just, it was knocking me over. I mean, as a kid,
Same for me, Britt. Like, it brought me into this world. Like, it made my own world come alive with imagination, what was out there, and my imagined reality, finding out how different it actually was behind the scenes. But I thought these guys were brothers in arms, together forever. No, and then of course you find out not every situation like that. Some of them were, and some of them ended up being like that. But yeah, it brought vibrancy to my life. It brought extra dimension and color.
yeah, it did. I remember in high school, I went with someone senior year to California, and we ended up in someone in Hollywood's apartment. It was like a 80's teen flick, and this lady Dee Holland who promoted shows, and Rick Fox was there, and they were talking how she knew Nicky, and she pointed that his number was right in her Rolodex. So when everybody wasn't looking, I took his number out of her Rolodex. And I tell Jeff this all the time. It blew my mind that he had the same amount of I thought there was a 8-digit phone number. Like the gods would give him like an extra number in his phone number. It was unfathomable that he had a number you could dial.
Like the bat phone or something. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
must be
just
some
like
direct.
he was not mortal. You know what I mean?
I get it. It's kind of like I remember going to see Van Halen at a stadium here in Toronto, and you can't believe that he was actually in the same. How could he be in the same building as me? This is incredible. He must have walked through one of the doors. Maybe I'm walking through a door Eddie walked through.
Yeah, yeah. It was just it was so large, and I mean, those guys went to the end, and I don't think Eddie still was just larger than life, and as is Dave. When you hear just a maniac, whether he's larger than life or a street bum, I don't know, but you know, we didn't have to see his wife post pictures where I call it the deballing of a guy, where a wife proves that she's tamed this rock god, and we can see him barbecuing and It's kind of a disappointment, though they have to live, but it's kind of a disappointment when I think about that.
Well, I think, we were lucky we grew up in the age of where there was still cachet with rock stars, right? We could maintain our illusions. We could have this imagined perception of what was happening, and often it was probably far more romantic than what was really happening. But we kind of idealize this through the words of the scribes of Hit Parader and Circus
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Faces.
The first book that I ever just blew my mind was Chuck Klosterman's Fargo Rock City, just where he hit it from the point of view we're talking about, where it was just a different point of view and how large and what this meant to us all. And your book hits that same vein with like, it meant a lot, means a lot, you know.
Well, thank you. It's funny. I was actually just speaking with a friend of mine, Todd Kearns, who I interviewed for the
I'm
book.
friends
And he
with Todd,
plays,
yeah.
yeah, Todd, great guy, and just how similar our experiences were as Canadians. Growing up in small towns, and he talks a lot about the tribalism of it all, where you actually find your people. Like we're finding each other right now.
Yeah.
It's not a common listening experience that there are people like you and I, Britt, who are communicating on this level. People start with songs, really. Like, a lot of people buy music. I love the song, makes me feel good. Then there's kind of maybe a deeper level where you say, oh, yeah, I really like that band. I'll buy another album. And then there's this other level where we've connected on a deep spiritual, emotional, psychological level. And it's inspired and it causes you to make life choices that are different. It just, we resonate on a frequency with these guys for some reason. It just hit us different.
It's just it is it's amazing, and you can look at these posters and do the math, whereas other people couldn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
You could run the numbers, and there's just such a minutia to it all. There's such a difference of Black and Blue and Bang Tango and Guns N' Roses. There's such a hierarchy of I mean.
And it's funny how sometimes a band that in my mind I've built up as huge, really didn't connect with a mass market. I'll tell you, I was just playing on the Monsters of Rock cruise with Lee Aaron, and I saw Davey Vane, and I nearly stopped dead in my tracks.
He's one of
Vane,
my best friends. Yeah, I'm super, yeah.
beat the bullet. I'm like, that. I was amazed at how few people knew that song, but to me, that song just hit me. I saw it on Much Music here in Canada. Had no respect. I said, this guy's huge. In my head, he is huge, and as an artist, he still is very much
well,
so.
Guys like him and Tammy were more culturally influenced people. Like Faster Pussycat influenced more. I moved to the Sunset Strip in '88 from New Jersey, and there was tattoos of Faster, but there weren't that many Warrant tattoos. People were culturally, there's vein tattoos. I heard of this band, The Hold Steady, I like, and he talks. Are you a band where people actually tattooed their name, the name of the band, or it meant that much to them? It's, I love Warrant, but it didn't mean.
Absolutely. I talked to Billy Rowe in the book, and Billy kind of mentioned, he said there were bands that were mall rockers. I went, mall rockers, and he listed a few bands like Warrant, like Poison, where and to be fair, Poison was in there in the clubs too, and so was Warrant, but for some reason it resonated in a more suburban way, where you have your Veins and your Faster Pussycats, your Sea Hags, where just it feels like a little more connected to the street. It feels like it's a little edgier, maybe a little more fashion forward. It's drawing from more disparate goth alternative influences too.
Or even Poison versus Warrant. Poison had so much, when that album came out, it was so, if you want to use the word punk rock, that was my punk rock. Those four guys looking like girls, and it ripped my head off. It tore my head off. There was nothing like it.
Well, I even say that in the book. To me, it's as authentic a record as the New York Dolls debut. I mean, like, what I love is I'm hearing guys playing to the absolute maximum of their ability. I feel the effort. I feel the hours put in. It's not about virtuosity. It's about intention. And the intention was there. Plus, they had the golden ticket in the songs. They had songs that connected. And I think the production on that first record, and even the second record, I can still hear the fingerprints, of each of the players. And it's charming and authentic and very important.
Yeah, we were just talking out because I'm doing this. I was on my show, and I played Shark Island, and we're talking about connection. And someone said, "Why wasn't this big?" And I said, what did you get from that song? Paris is Burning. I don't understand. Like, let's even call them in the docking thing. Like, I don't know. Like, you watch that video. What is I hear Paris Burning? It meant nothing. Well, I don't even know what then I played Lee Aaron, Metal Queen, and the sounds, the chains, the everything. This connects. Whether it was a billion records or not, it connects, and you know what it is, and you know what it's about by the end.
Well, yeah, and that speaks to intention. And I've talked with Lee enough about this. Like that song, really, that was her "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time." That was her anthem of female empowerment. You know what I mean? 17-year-old kid kind of writing a song, taking on the world, taking on the music industry. You know, and you feel that intention. And yeah, you're right. Like I think there's something to be said for that. When Bret Michaels is singing "You Gotta Cry Tough" out in the streets, he's living it, and you kind of feel the authenticity of someone who's actually done it.
And you still do. That's why when he went on that, Nothing But a Good Time, when they play, it's just, I don't know, it's still just so special. When I went to the stadium tour, it was so much more authentic. And I don't mean to just keep beating up on Crew. I grew up playing with John 5, but when Crew came out, "The Future Is Ours," no, it's not. Like you know what I mean? It's just wrong. But Poison were so authentic and so real and better than ever.
That's what I heard. I didn't get a chance to see that show, but by all accounts, they took it in terms of rock and roll spirit. Like the night belonged to them, from what I've heard.
And you talked about something in your book that just meant so much to me, because I did the same thing. You walked in my mom's hairdresser with the picture of Joe Elliott and said,
Yeah.
who did you say? You said Joe Elliott and someone else.
John Bon Jovi.
Jovi. Was that it? Wait.
Yeah.
And said, "Give me this. Give me that haircut." Right?
Yeah.
We just wanted to be cool so bad.
Well, yeah, and to me, it was all a mystery. Like I need to do this thing, and I have no idea, but I've got hair, they've got hair. I'll start there. But the best was, I even say in the book, she's like, "Well, you got short hair. You have to grow your hair. You can't come and get a haircut and expect your hair to get longer." And I was like, all right, there's my first clue.
Totally. We did what we had to do, I remember getting to LA and seeing a poster of Burnett on the side of Gazzari's and almost being in tears that I had to go home because they were genetically perfect. My mom I was 18, just let me grow my hair. And here are these guys just, in hindsight, it wasn't as cool. I was actually cooler at the end of the day, but right then, and I understand what that added to the Axl Rose madness, because he did the same thing. He was just not getting chicks and not genetically correct when he got to LA, genetically correct rocker.
Well, it's funny, Paul Gilbert, I don't think this made it in the book, but when we were talking, he mentioned that Burnett poster, the billboard, and he said, "They've got 27 feet of hair." Like it actually said that. And having like a meeting with Racer X and like, this is important business. We got to figure out how to get more hair. And they were talking about extensions and things like that. It's like, oh man, this is crucial. But yeah, in retrospect, it really wasn't about the hair extension. It was people who were, like you said, there was a cooler thing that was starting to come up with the guns and the faster pussycats. And
yeah. And now that we're talking about Paul Gilbert, we have to talk about solos that are just, my friend Jeff said this, they were like firecrackers being thrown into a room. They were just, those solos were like firecrackers going off.
It was such an exciting time. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any other era where people were really dropping the needle, picking up the needle to go to the guitar solos sometimes. But I did it with Vito Bratta and George Lynch, and not to discount some of the songwriting. There was great songs there, but not always. But there was usually always a slamming guitar solo in a Dawkins song. So, I mean, I remember actually doing that or queuing up the tape. Like I knew where in the tape on the back for the Attack album. Oh yeah, man. When I get to Lost Behind the Wall, it's great solo right here,
Yeah. And Vito Bratta, Jesus, oh my God, such good solos.
Well, songs within songs, right? But he kind of married Elton John with Van Halen, and it was Michael Wagner talks about how this is what blows my mind. Those are one take. He's playing the rhythm track, and then he does the solo, and then goes back to the rhythm, and they might overdub a rhythm after. Like he just had that fluidity and facility and that melodic sensibility. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. It was. There's just so I'm so glad you give so much credit and get under the hood of this movement in this time. I mean, and then little tidbits of information like, I mean, I know everything about Skid Row, but I know Rob Affuso's wife was the one that designed the logo.
Me neither. You know, like just talking with Scotty, and that little tidbit comes up. Like it's amazing how humble the origins of these iconic images or songs or guitar solos are. And you realize, as even talking with guys like Gilby, and they're talking about how close knit that community of players was in LA. We, like I said, when we were doing that Monsters of Rock cruise with Lee Aaron, I had a chance to hang out with Chris Holmes, and Chris was right there in the epicenter, friends with Eddie. Like we were watching George Lynch. He goes, "Oh man, I remember watching George in the '70s. He was this good back then, you know." And I'm going, "This is actually an historical installment that's happening right here." I'm actually talking with the history of LA rock with a guy like Chris, you know,
Yeah.
and seeing how it was all developing out of this California hot rod culture, modifying things to suit their needs, to suit this vision. And I found that very heartwarming, like, and kind of proved I felt it was helping prove my point that there was a lot more here than just crass commercialism. They were pursuing some kind of spiritual endeavor, some kind of artistic endeavor where they were kind of, felt compelled to go out and actually, this isn't doing what I need. I need more. I've got to figure it out. And Eddie leads the way with that, and other guys get on. Fascinating.
And you have a part about all the California guitar makers and, which was pretty cool, right? Yeah. Just like California
Yeah.
was such a thing growing up, not in California, right?
Well, that's it. I mean, it really did seem like the mecca of everything. I mean, that was kind of my goal. I was going to drop out of high school and move to LA. I mean, it sounds like you did. You
I
actually went
did.
and
I
made it
did.
happen.
I didn't drop out, but graduation night, I was out.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Well, yeah, it definitely felt like something to aspire to, a place to aspire to, and yeah, and fortunately, I got to go there many years later. I went and made albums there and played a lot of the places I read about. So eventually, I got there, and I'll be honest, it was satisfying for
Yeah.
me. It felt like that. It felt like there was still a magic there, some residual magic.
And you could still walk into the rainbow and it's still just magical. It's still like,
Absolutely.
you can have you can have Duff McKagan next to a guy trying to look like Duff McKagan eating spaghetti. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to me, the place looks so small, but you get inside, it feels like it's endless. Like it really does feel like, it's like you're crossing into some new realm or something. It's very, very magical.
Yeah, the rainbow still feels like the rainbow from when I got there, and it's changed obviously, but the whiskey, isn't quite what it was. It's still the whiskey in the building, but
Yeah,
the
changed a
rainbow
bit.
is electric still some nights.
Yeah, man, that's so cool.
Yeah, what was the first time you got to LA? What year was the first?
The first time I got to LA was actually 1999, and I was in a band, and we had received a grant from Much Music, which is our version of MTV, to go shoot a video. So we decided we'd take that grant money, go to Rialto, go to the one of those old deserted cowboy towns or whatever, shoot the video there. But we also played at the Whiskey A Go Go on that trip. So that was my first time. And then I returned years later to make some records with Gilby Clarke. He
Okay,
produced my band Crash Kelly, produced some records there. We signed with a label out of LA, Century Media. They had a rock imprint called Liquor and Poker Music.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we signed with them and did the records with Gilby. I ended up joining Gilby's band for a while, which was cool. And then I played, like, got to play the Staples Center with Nelly Furtado and Universal Amphitheater and kind of the bigger
Wow.
rooms too. So I played the Viper Room. I played the Whiskey,
Yeah, you
played.
did.
Yeah, I got a chance to actually
And
soak it
Crash
up.
Kelly itself, I mean, that probably means like, because I remember that band totally. That was when Gilby was producing you guys, the Bronx. He did the Bronx
Yeah,
record and everything. It was a cool time.
it was exciting, and I remember when Crash Kelly first started, like 2003. It felt like there might be a renaissance of hard rock. As we had done a UK tour with the Choir Boys, and the Darkness had just come out, and I remember going to clubs and you're seeing young people packed on a dance floor dancing to new hard rock music. It was exciting, and people were buying our records. It felt like, oh, this might go someplace. And the Liquor and Poker thing happened, and it didn't quite go where we all wanted it to go. But for a couple of months there, we had our fingers crossed, and it sure was fun.
And people know who Crash Kelly are. Think of how many bands that nobody knows who they were. You know, when people talk of the bands and go through the Joker and all these bands that Shark Island, just you're in that conversation.
Well, I feel very, very lucky to even be the smallest of footnotes, but it was, of all the things I've had the good fortune to be able to do, that's still the most special because I did it for no other reason than I had to do it. The songs came out, I had to do it. I had to see this through. And the highlight of that time was doing the Alice Cooper tour in the States. And for me, it felt like perfect. If we certainly didn't make any money or anything, but we kind of got a chance to see what it looked like, and I got to do it with my song. So I felt very fortunate.
It is. It's a special thing. Do you? It's one of the tiers you get to. Who's that band that opened the Motley Crue tour? The first band that I walked in the middle of the day, and I forget.
Classless Act.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're going through that most likely. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
they'll be good, but I doubt it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
but they're
having
getting
that special ride, and it'll most likely 2 or 3 years. I hope it goes further for them, but most likely, I know that feeling. You know that feeling.
yeah, but getting a chance to have a swing, it carries weight later on in life. I tell young artists all the time, make the record, go make a record, man. Make a record because you need to make a
Yeah,
record. Don't worry about the rest. Like make it because you need to with the way that you pictured yourself doing it when you were starting out.
totally.
Like don't chase anything other than what's in your heart. And that sounds cliche, but the reward comes later because it pays emotional and spiritual dividends.
Yeah. And now, how did you come to writing the book? Because the book's really well written. It's not, like
Oh, thank you, man.
it's not rudimentary. It's really well written. How did this come about?
Well, it's my second book. The first book I wrote about 10 years ago was about Canadian hard rock scene and metal scene. It's called Metal on Ice. And it was about the bands that I grew up going to see in small arenas in Northern Ontario and who had made some inroads in the States, bands like Helix and Honeymoon Suite. But they never really got their due in the Canadian music history books. It was all glazed over.
Wasn't Icon from there too?
No, I think Icon's from Arizona.
Oh, okay, okay.
Maybe. But bands like White Wolf or
Yeah.
Killer Dwarfs, Kick Axe,
Mhm.
bands who came and Coney Hatch, who I play with now, like who had a chance to go down the States. So I that was my first book, and this book came about because I was inspired to write because so many times as a session musician, I've seen this thing where there are cool references that you can mention on a session, and then there's uncool things. For example, if I come up with a riff and I know that I was thinking about Cinderella, I'm thinking about Tom Kiefer.
Yeah.
But if I say that, that idea is not going to pass. But if I say, hey, check this out, it's a Joe Perry type thing, all of a sudden that idea gets more credence. It has more weight to it. But I know that I'm really referencing my first, point of contact, which was Cinderella. I found myself getting upset when bands that I love, like Mr. Big, were relegated in some people's minds to one image frozen in time, a billowy pirate shirt or a ballad or one song, when I know that that's a band that has great artistic depth, that continue to make music that was very important to me, is very important to me. So I found myself always defending this in different bands I was in different conversations with the musical intelligentsia, whoever, or maybe that was an imagined musical intelligentsia that I've made up as an imaginary enemy. I don't know, but I found myself defending it a lot, and I wanted to at least try and look at the artistic intention and the sonic development, show that the best of this stuff deserves to be considered in the overarching rock and roll tapestry.
It's so true. It's so well put. Sometimes I talk to people from LA, and I was pretty cool. I was in a band, Blackboard Jungle. We did good.
Yeah, sure.
We toured with Faster Pussycat, so we were a little, let's even say, dirty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the glamorous, softest guys I remember on the strip that seemed like they were in Warrant, who I love, you talk to them, they go, I really was into punk. Dude, I never listened to the Dwarves or Black Flag or any, and I know these guys didn't grow up on Iggy Pop. I know. I just know. You know what I mean? And it like you say, like, why do we got to go to this influence instead of just say this?
Yeah. I know. It's the cachet, the fear of putting yourself out there. I don't know what it is, but I find with each passing year, I'm less interested in hiding it or less interested in trying to. I really want to go out and be an acolyte for these bands, and because I've met them, I've had the great opportunity to play with them, and I've heard them, I talked to them, and these are people who love music, like Chris Holmes. That guy loves music and speaks with authority about music and understands and was there at ground zero for so much of this stuff. He's a sensitive, artistic guy, but he's lampooned, sure, by some lifestyle choices, by that interview that happened in Decline of Western Civilization, the metal years, where he's drinking vodka in the pool. But it's not the full story. And it's not, to me, it's a small part of the story. I'm interested in the art.
Yeah. My friend was just producing this new 18-year-old kid, makes all his music on a laptop, lives in this alternate universe that we could not even fathom, this video game, and he's going to be signed soon. And they started talking, the commonality was Jason Becker, their love of Jason Becker.
Wow.
That's part of this kid's equation, along with like stuff that we could, Travis Scott or whatever he's into, what I mean? Not even Travis Scott isn't even but just so crazy that's part of the equation.
Well, kids
how
today,
did he find Jason Becker? That's what I know. How did an 18-year-old, and you know what I mean?
Well, I'm an elementary school music teacher, right? So I teach instrumental music, and I know this. The kids have all of the world's music at their fingertips instantly, and information is coming at them so rapidly. They're picking up things off TV shows, off movies. And the cool thing is, rather than maybe you and I, who grew up, we'd identify with a Kiss or a Motley Crue, and we become part of that tribe. They're hearing things so fast, they just kind of have their immediate emotional reaction to a song. I love that song. What is that? Oh, it's Judas Priest. Like I have a little grade 7 rock band. They're 3 girls, they're a power trio, and they come every day at lunch and practice, and they're playing Breaking the Law by Priest. I go, yeah. How do you know that song? I don't know. Heard it somewhere. Or some, they found it through some website and it recommended it. And so, yeah, like they're finding this stuff. And
then they can go home and listen to Blackpink or whatever they listen to side by side. I couldn't like Metallica. People go, why do you now? Because I would have to fight thrashers where I grew up, because I like Rat, Jovi, Crew, and you had the threats, the metal militia over there that you literally had to fight to rock and like Motley Crue.
I remember for me, I really liked a lot of the new wave stuff. There was a band called Platinum Blonde that I loved. They were playing at the arena right down the street from me in my hometown in North Bay. But I didn't want to go because I thought it wasn't cool. I like Helix. I can't like them. But really, I really wanted to go.
Like Tears for Fears also was, now that I love, was the Enemy growing up, just because it got in the way of waiting for Iron Maiden was played in the middle of the day. Those videos, waiting for the Priest and Maiden videos. And you talk about this section of music, it's cool in your book, where before the Cruise and the Rats, it really was like Maiden, Ozzy, and Priest, which was a big part. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess back then, you had to pick who you're going to smoke with outside. The rockers smoke over here under the bleachers, and the preppies, they smoke, but they go over here by their sports cars, whatever.
But even the rockers, we were all in the same tribe, even through Quiet Riot. But once Rat and Crew came out, Metallica started getting bigger. There started being a divide, I think.
Oh, okay.
Who to me, who I was able to hang with.
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
You talked about something too that was really cool was, let's face it, but Jovi took over the earth on Slippery When Wet. And Billy Squier and Al DeNova were a huge influence on that. And even Black and Blue, he got his producer from Black and Blue.
Well, that's it, right? And Fairburn, right? Loverboy, like all these things coming out of Vancouver had a big impact, on those sounds. I know Bon Jovi for sure knew about the Honeymoon Suite album, The Big Prize. They knew about that Black and Blue record, they knew about what Loverboy was doing. But they kind of got in at the zeitgeist. They just had the right songs. They had Desmond Child, had the right team to capture that sound, and boom, it was. Yeah, I remember it was a game-changing thing. Like Slippery was everywhere.
Yeah. And then after that, Skid Row coming out of that, you know what I mean? It just, that's all you listen to at the pizza parlor. You know what I mean?
Well, to me, Skid Row felt like mine. Like really felt like my band. Like it was, I was still grade 9 when Bon Jovi came out. It seemed unattainable. Skid Row felt attainable. Like it felt like there was a bit of a looseness, a danger around them. Great songs, but it felt edgier, and that right down from the album cover to the video to Youth Gone Wild to seeing them open for Aerosmith. I talk about in the book, like it wasn't perfectly in tune. The tempos were way too fast. Sebastian Bach's twirling around, but it felt dangerous, knees and elbows up. But they always landed the parts, right? Like it might have been falling apart, but they landed on their feet. And that to me spoke to me. All of a sudden I said, that's what I want. I don't want to be perfect. I want to contain or capture that energy.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I saw them in clubs as a kid. We were able to go to teen clubs. I saw them with Matt Fallon even, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and someone, my buddy said, you want to, that was friends with Rachel, my friend Jamie, you want to meet our new singer? We were in Staten Island. We went to meet him, and it was like the genetically correct front man just opened the door, and he was even cool to us, just like, oh my God, like God had made the rock god at this point. It was the pinnacle rock god, and he just put them together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was combustible. It was dangerous, and they had those incredible Snake and Rachel songs. Scotty Hill, one of the great guitar players of the era. Snake too, but Scotty especially, the lyricism and the soul and the playing. Amazing band.
Yeah, yeah. And then even out of Jovi Cinderella, who, I love that you do. I did like how they looked on Night Songs. I mean,
Yeah.
but they incredible to this day. I still go see Kiefer solo.
Well, it's funny, like those videos. I remember the gels, like the purple and the mustard yellow, the colors attracted you in. They pulled you in. And it's funny when you listen to Nobody's Fool, it's like a Seasons of Wither by Aerosmith or something. It's dark and it's gothic almost, and it's pretty interesting stuff. And what I loved about Kiefer was he's playing a Les Paul. Like he's all glammed out, but he's playing classic guitars. He's not playing the pointer guitars, right? Like, I mean, there was something that felt classic about them.
Yeah, it really was. You talk about it being a great injustice, how the retreat, I mean, for how they look, but dude, even the spinning of the guitars when you're a kid, Eric Brittingham, just total rock gods.
That's true. There was a whole East Coast thing, right? And Kick seems to be a really important band for for Extreme, for Cinderella, for Skid Row. Everybody looked at Kicks, and Kicks really had that show element. Like they were absolutely super tight, quirky, especially the first albums, right? Like a little bit of new wave meets Cheap Trick meets AC/DC, and a little Southern rock in there too. And that seemed to be a real inspiration on those bands, and that showmanship aspect of keeping people entertained in the clubs,
And Kix was one of those bands when I lived in LA, moving to LA in 88, 89, that came and they had cultural influence over the town. When they came to LA, just like when Skid Row first came and played the Whiskey, it was a thing. You know what I mean? Like I even saw when the Darkness first played the Roxy. It was a cultural thing. And it was weird that like, okay, this matters here. Something from L'Amour's in Brooklyn, where I'd go as a kid to see shows, matters here in LA, and Kix so mattered. Because when I saw Kix at Exposure 54, I remember Nikki Sixx was in line to see them. And they tried to ID him, and he laughed like, well, and everybody, he's 21. But Nikki and Tommy went to see Kix because they influenced everybody.
Oh, wow. So cool, man.
It's and then something like Trickster didn't matter at all on the strip. I don't know three people that had that album, even though it went platinum. It's strange, things that mattered in LA and didn't.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember like they were kind of the first band I think I saw wearing plaid.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember this. They kind of had like this youthful thing. So someone must have been hip on the wardrobe thing or the set going, hey man, you young guys, check this out. This is actually what's kind of happening right now. And they were probably young enough to take the direction well. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it felt more like Heartland kind of,
Yeah, and they
almost
were
like
great
what Ty
live.
Ketto does.
Yeah, in Jersey, but it just didn't resonate on the strip. And not that the
Gotcha.
strip was everything, but like I say, Faster Pussycat, the influence compared to records sold was insane that they had over that place.
Ah, very cool.
You
LA
know,
Guns too, I'd imagine, to a degree.
yeah, and they did. Yeah, you're right with the black hair, but it didn't change the atmosphere of the room as much as when Tammy walked anywhere. It was that I call them atmosphere changers. If Tammy walked in the rainbow, the air changed a little bit. If Axel walked in the rainbow, the whole bit, it was like you
Oh
were in a black
wow.
hole. Just his presence in any room and hearing, because he did go out at that point. You just the world changed.
Wow, it's so cool, man. Well,
There's those people that walk in the room and it just changes.
there is, I'll tell you, D. Snyder.
Right.
I didn't even have to see that guy walking up behind me the first time he got on stage with me. I was playing, I went, it felt like electricity went up my spine. And then boom, this guy charges the front of the stage and everything is amplified. Everything's electric. He's a massive personality. Like, I mean, we all know he's one of the great frontmen of all time, but like there is something other there. It's like you're saying, there's this energy that comes off him.
This intangible quality. I mean, you talk about it, you try to get to it in this. It's hard to explain, but those little things add up to that quality of what just makes things special.
I think so. Like Ozzy, to me, it's the humanity in his voice. He's the common man. He actually connects on a very base primal level that's he's relatable. And you feel empathy when you hear him. I don't know why, because like it's not about, like I said, it's not about perfection. There's a million perfect technical guitar players, a million perfect technical singers, but it's the ones that connect on an emotional intelligence level, like a Brett Michael, like a Janie Lane. Janie was a great singer, but his songs connected. What I loved about Warrant was it made me feel okay to be a suburban kid. Like I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know what a down boy is, but maybe I could be a down boy. Like it sounds like it's just a guy who doesn't do real well with girls and just wants to hang out and find acceptance among his peer group. Well, that's me.
you're right. Because when I first got to LA, I made friends with someone I'm friends at the still, Stevie from Tough, and he brought me and he played me demos and he played me Warrant's amazing demo. And when he said the word suburban skies, it blew my mind. That was a
Same
large
here.
word. You know what I mean? Sometimes just one word, suburban skies. Whoa. That's as
Yeah,
big as like, what was your biggest word from Crew? This is Hollywood. Danger to me was the one, like as a kid, that their most important song.
I had a chat with one of my A&R guys at Century Media, Andrew, and we were at a party, having a party in LA, and we both kind of shared in that moment. I can't remember if he was from Colorado. He was from a smaller town too, and we were just talking, and we both had that moment, like, dude, we're actually here because of that song. Like we are doing what we do because of that band and that song.
So
Amazing.
true. And what'd you say?
I said it's amazing.
Yeah, and even Crew, when they finally, I remember going to summer school and City Boy Blues, and what Raise Your Hands to Rock, that was the one.
Yeah.
60 singing about being 16 in suburbia. Crew were singing about, to me, it was me. They were finally singing about me on that record.
Well, that's another part of Nikki Sixx's lyrical genius, right? I remember standing tall saying, I'm going to be a rock and roll star. Someone said, sit down, boy, you already
Gotta
are. Like,
believe.
gotta believe.
That was
Amazing.
large. We had grown from Shout at the Devil for a while. They had a conversation with us,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely.
And I love that you talk about your first live album being a Wasp album. That I was like, I believe this guy. This guy, like you say, what you're talking about. Nobody says that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Random Comes Alive was my first. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's Wasp.
It was Wasp. And man, that record, well, because I mean, that was the gateway because I lived in a small town. You couldn't get a lot of records. You got what was available, but live records, I didn't have a lot of money. I got all the songs, I got all the big tunes, and I got to feel like maybe I was there. I wasn't going to get to go to Toronto or a big city to go see this concert, but I could live that experience and see the pictures and read who did their hair and their makeup and all that stuff. It was incredible.
Yeah. Now, how did so you got, this is not self-published. You got the book deal,
No.
which is real, and the quality of this is that. So how did that come about?
Well, I was very fortunate. A good friend of mine had written a book for ECW Press, and it introduced me to a fellow named Michael Holmes, who's a kindred spirit, and he's editor in chief there, and he just got what I was putting across. I had done a book before, so I wrote a little pitch and an outline of what I want to do, and he got it, and he really encouraged me to kind of bring in the personal along with the kind of amassed knowledge, such as it is. I don't know how much knowledge I have, but to kind of combine it so that it was really about, I'm paying respect, but I'm also showing us how as the music progresses, we also progress as listeners, as human beings, and how music it follows some of us maybe in a little deeper way as we progress through life, right? We feel a little stronger connection with it. And
Yeah.
so really, I think this is a book for guys like you and me. Like I want to bring people in, but I did go a little deep on some of the language, and I thought it was important because I wanted to show what it meant to me, not only on a personal level, spiritual level, but like on a musical level, right?
Yeah, totally. And you hit that. People get mad at me when I say this, and I've had this conversation many times. It's like the genius is the stupidity, because when you look at GNR and even the first Crew album, the amount of times intros go, things that happen, you can only do when you're 23 and just stupid. And I don't know that people hate that word, but you use that word. It's just, I don't know, when you're not thinking, you can't do that. Like once you learn how songs go and stuff, but they're at that page where they're still got that high school mentality, but it's kind of a perfect, beautiful time for these timeless songs.
It's funny. I think when you hear demos of, say, before Van Halen made the first record with Ted Templeman, you hear the demos. You hear the demos for GNR. You hear Hollywood Road stuff. You're hearing all these ideas, but they're nowhere near the versions that became the iconic ones. To me, the magic is when you have a band that's just writing like that. Like everything's cool. This riff's cool. I'm going to sing it like this. I'm going to sing high. This is so cool. And then you have someone like a Mike Klink or a Bruce Fairburn or Ted Templeman come along and say, that's great. This part has the energy. Why don't you double this and maybe chop this and maybe we put a harmony on here, but knows enough to give a little bit of form and then get the hell out of the way when the magic's happening. That to me is a great producer. And I think a lot of those bands benefited from amazing producers who could step back and look at it subjectively, right? They could listen to that music from an objective point of view. They weren't in it, but they would still let the bands explode, right? It's kind of like taking Jackson Pollock and then saying, okay, but we got to put it in a frame. So,
It's very well put, because I one of the guys in my current band, he always goes, why doesn't this guy that's our age that played his whole life get it the way? Because he's never been produced. He's paid for his own recordings. He's never had someone paying for him to record and a producer come in, go, like, which you've done, I've done, where it's like, I didn't even know what a vocal harmony was till I was produced, or like, the drummer's got to play in time to, you're taking our energy away. But then you start to realize a click pulls you in behind, ahead, and you've been produced, I've been produced, and that's Axl's been produced. For as primal as he is, he's been produced, so he knows he can produce himself. You can't produce. My nephew's like, I'm a producer. I'm like, how do you be a producer? You've never been produced.
You've never. That's right. You got to go. Like I'm a firm believer in it. My first experience with that was with Jamie Stewart from the Cult, bass player from the Cult. He had just moved to Toronto when I moved there and was looking to produce young bands. So I was very lucky, very early on in the game, to work with someone who'd worked with Bob Rock, who'd and made albums and kind of temper my youthful enthusiasm, because trust me, as you know, you never know more in life than you do when you're 18.
Yeah.
You know it all. I knew it all. And I, with every passing year, I know less and less.
Yeah.
But it was great to have somebody who I respected say, no, that actually isn't very good. Try this. And then I go, oh, Oh, okay. I can hear the difference. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a lot of when I think of it, a lot of guys that we ran into were from Canada. I don't know if you know Bill Kennedy. He was from Canada. He worked with Garth Richardson, who's from
Oh,
Canada.
Garth. Yeah, I know Garth. Yeah.
Part of that thing, and he worked with our band. And Bill didn't really produce us as much as record us. And Garth came in and for 5 minutes and changed my life. That's out of
Yeah.
that's out of and just you started going, oh, this is what being produced. That's what that word is.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone who has that subjective, the knowledge, the experience, but also the temperament. Like a guy like Mike Fraser, who I talk with in the book. We did a record with Mike, and you know, he's got nothing vested in it other than wanting to make it great. He just wants it to sound good. He wants, he when we're not arguing about anything other than, hey man, I just need the ingredients to be right so I can make this stew.
And you've been in the room, I'm sure, in a band where some kid's the great young drummer, but he's never been produced. And once he starts being told not to just do his thing, he atrophies and the confidence is raped and he can't handle it.
I've had I've done a lot of session work, and I've been called in on those moments where the band's out in the lobby playing video games and you kind of come in the back and the producer's saying, hey man, we got to fix this. Can you play a couple of things, and you're kind of ghosting in, and it's exactly for that reason, right? Like I always try and tell the producer, oh man, keep that part. That part's okay. Make sure the kid's on the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it's just some people aren't made for that. And to that point, it's interesting when people slam like a Warrant record because you have a guy like Mike Slamer coming in and playing solos. Well, it has nothing to do, like both Eric and Joey are great guitar players. They're on those records playing in some capacity. They help form the songs. They're there. To their great credit, they accepted the fact that, hey, someone can come in here, elevate these songs, and give us a chance to go out there and do what we do. Like to me, that's makes them every bit as valid as the guy who plays every note on the record. It's the maturity and stepping up and doing what's best for the band, best for the project. And those guys stayed in there and watched Mike, and he showed them the parts, and then they go out and they deliver, and they're great guitar players. Great.
And the next album, they pretty much, I know CC, but that, you're ready. You've been produced and you can do it.
You've been produced, you learned, you accepted, and those songs were richer for Mike Slamer's contributions on it. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I've listened to the records gone solo to like, wow, like you talk about fireworks. But it's a little. I think, like you said, it's a little easier for a guitar player because you're like, even if you keep a little bit of that, it's great, as opposed to when a drummer just gets replaced. That's rough when you just get your picture on the album and know, what I mean.
It's tough, man. And I remember viewing my first like major label session, the producer going, man, got to call LA. We need someone else who can cut these tracks. Like it feels terrible when you're not delivering, right? And it must hurt, but the drums are so fundamental to the architecture of the song. If you spend so much time and you can't get it solid, that's tough, right? That's tough.
Yeah, because you only, because vocals are everything at the end of the day, and you need that studio time. It's not like now where you're recording at home. Studio time is very expensive.
Well, that's another part of the producer's job, right? They have a budget. They've got to deliver that record in a timely fashion within the confines of the budget. And time is money. And if they can spend a couple $100 and get somebody who does that for a living, they're going to do it.
Final note that I forgot, one thing I really wanted to talk about. Just you hit on the magic of the arcade. It's funny. The first arcade I walked into to see a band, it was Zakk Wylde, Jeff Wylde, then singing American Band into Aerosmith songs with Sanctuary in the local mall, Supercade. But the arcade was such a magical place of patches. And these are things, just one thing you hit on, the magic of this thing we love at that time.
Yeah, man. Well, to me, the arcade, like, you're literally going from the light to the dark, like it's like the lights are out and all of a sudden you're submerged in a world of neon and blackness. Like it's pretty exciting, right? And all the stimulus went with it, and the older kids who scared the living hell out of you, but somehow it was like going to the roller rink. I don't know if you guys did
Oh
roller
yeah,
rink.
yeah. I mean, that was our version of the Starwood as kids. We didn't grow up in LA and get to sneak in the clubs or the rail. We went to the, the roller rink or the arcade. Yeah.
That's it, right? So this is where you're going to experience a little bit of danger, and to feel a little autonomy, to hear loud music. The music's never sounded better than when it's cranking out and you watch some guy with an April wine back patch, playing Galga. Like, I mean, pretty exciting.
Incredible, incredible, man. Well, thank you for this love letter. And I'll put links to everybody so they can grab this book. It's a great read. It's awesome. And thanks for helping keep the name of this alive and realizing the depth of this thing that means so much to all our lives.
Well, listen, Britt, I really love chatting with you. I loved hearing about all your experiences too. So thank you for sharing all that with me. It's amazing, man.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Say goodbye to everybody and hang out so I can say goodbye to you.
Okay, my friends, take care. Don't call it hair metal, but you can call it what you want. I call it rock and roll.